Okay, so today we're doing two more episodes. We're doing 19 Provenance and 20 Dead Man's Blood. So probably a lot of like oohing and awing and then like a lot of screaming. I hear your notes. You're getting all your
Yeah.
thoughts ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and summarize Provenance then. So Provenance is probably a Sam fan's like biggest, most exciting like episode as far as
It's just nice.
like love, yeah,
Marge,
like
Marge Simpson holding the potato. I just think it's
just
neat.
think it's
Like,
neat. Yes, I love. Oh, and RIP to her because her voice actor passed away. Like,
oh, did she?
yeah, like I think in the
Yeah.
last like week or so. Again, guys, we are
Oh,
still
okay, I hadn't
recording
seen.
in June, so this is old news for you. Probably coming
Yeah.
out in August, but
Oh, that's sad. I
I
mean,
know
she'd been sounding, you know,
forever.
like, yeah, and like towards the end, like the way Marge was sounding,
Oh
like
yeah.
it was kind of like, oh gosh, like let this woman retire. So,
Well,
but yeah. Oh dear, that's really sad.
I know.
Anyway.
Well, and we lost Donald Sutherland yesterday. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
love him. Anyways, not to go down a road of like actors who have passed away this week, but anyways, so this was the first episode I got to watch on my DVD box set. So I got to like hear the actual music, and so I wasn't traumatized by any terrible Netflix music this time. Thank God. Right. And then it's just fun to see a little love interest for Sam. Sam has been grieving this whole season. And so finally we get to see him go on a date. And it's just so cute. So the summary essentially is there's this disgusting like family portrait that's in this house. Like it's not cute. It's not like, oh, you can see where things used to be. It looks haunted immediately. Like
Yeah, I have a story to tell about like a haunted portrait that I have known in my own life. Just because every time I watch this episode, like I literally think of it. So
oh
we'll get into that later. But
yeah, I definitely want to hear about that. Okay. So obviously the haunted portrait is going to cause havoc. I think the family in that is housing it gets killed. And then the boys end up interacting with this. I think it's another situation where like Sam uses John's journal to be like, here, like,
Mhm.
see, we need to do this because dad said something about it. So
Kind
they
of. There's a bit more. I'll get into this. This is a good Sam's Big Beautiful Brain episode.
oh yeah,
Like it's a little bit more than just him like seeing something in the journal and being like, oh yeah, that thing. There's more like he has to put more together.
I see your box set in the background.
Not as big as your box set. I don't know why I'm showing it. This is an audio medium, Vic. What are you doing?
Yours is rectangular shaped, mine is square
Uh-huh.
shaped because it goes like because I have 15 seasons in it and you only have eight, correct? Eight.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
This is a very neurodivergent summary so far. We've like sidetracked at least 5 times. It's beautiful.
This is yeah. I'm always chasing rabbit holes. That's why I started talking about Donald Sutherland, but mostly because I love him so much in Pride and Prejudice. So I've been thinking about him all morning. Okay.
Oh.
Anyways, back to Sam getting to go on a date.
Yes.
So the boys end up going to like this cell. It's like the family's dead, so now all their art is being sold. And
Mhm.
Sam and Dean meet Sarah, who is incredible. And she is working this auction, and her stuffy father is like kind of a snob and tries to kick the boys out. But they get her number. Well, Sam does. And so they essentially to get more information about, the family and like what happened to them. Sam goes and takes her out. He gets some information. They go back to Sarah's place and he gets the provenance like paperwork to
Mhm.
better understand where the paintings have all come from. And then they eventually discover that the portrait is haunted by what they think is the father who was accused of murdering his entire family. And so they're able to eventually put the pieces together and realize that it was not actually the father, it was the little like adopted daughter in the
Mhm.
family. in the meantime, another poor woman like bought this horrible portrait and then also got murdered. And also Sarah's been a badass and has been like insistent on coming along on these hunts with the boys, which is really exciting. This is the kind of dynamic I feel the guys need. Like there should be
Yeah.
a girl present at all times. It's very good for both of them, but she's very cool. And so they end up back at what they think is the mausoleum for the family and
Mhm.
notice that there are only 4 urns instead of 5. So they go burn the dad's body, which they find out was buried in a pauper's grave because everyone was so ashamed of him being a serial killer or whatever, or like a family annihilator essentially. And so they're checking to make sure that that worked. And what they realize is it didn't. And so Sarah and Sam are caught by the haunted painting, locked inside. Dean's locked out of the house. And so they realize it's the little girl in the painting and that the dad looked creepy to the side because he was trying to warn them about the little girl being a creep. And so while Sam and Sarah are trying to hold off this little girl ghost, Dean has to rush to the mausoleum and burn the doll. That was her favorite toy because it used part of her hair. And so that's how they end up ending the haunt and everyone's safe. And then Sam and Dean are going to leave the next day. And Sarah and Sam have this really cute moment. And Sam kind of is like, bye. And it's awkward and cute. And Dean's like kind of shrugging because he's like, dang, you really missed an opportunity. But then Sam like turns back around and goes and he kisses her. And it's like really cute. And everybody went, yeah, and then it
A
was
tiny
over.
baby.
He's a tiny, tall baby. And she's like, heck yeah. And it's over. That's the end. It's a really
Yeah,
fun, nice episode.
it's lovely. Yeah, it
It's
is.
great.
So do you want me to tell you about this haunted painting so we can get it out of the way?
Yes. Oh my God.
Okay.
Tell me.
So I do not believe in like supernatural stuff. I enjoy it in fiction. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in curses. I don't believe in hauntings, but I 100% genuinely believe that this painting was like cursed or haunted or something. So
So you do believe in it?
no, but just for this one thing.
Okay.
Like
Got it.
so I need to set the scene by saying that this painting was for some reason in the dining hall at my school.
Okay. Already a little eerie.
Yeah,
You know, it has like old history.
I feel well, no, because I went to like a school that like it's not a posh school. I feel like painting in a dining hall, probably especially to Americans, maybe sounds posh. It was just a school. It was just like a regular ass state school.
I like pictured Jess's college and like Ian McKellen is like an alumni.
No, very much not that. No. There's like folding tables.
Okay.
And like, yeah, okay, that kind of
like
vibe.
a public school in America over here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But for some reason they have this painting. So it's like looming above you while you're like sat there trying to eat your jacket potato for lunch. And it's this like tableau of all these people sat around a table and every single one of them looks just like absolutely fucked.
Oh,
like
no.
I can't even describe what their faces look like. They look fucking haunted. They look cursed. Every person looks like there is something wrong or like they're on the verge of death. And then there's like and when you then like look deeper at each of them, like there's all sorts of weird things going on between them. So like one of the guys has like his hand under the table, basically like on another woman's like
oh my
basically on her crotch. And it's like this is in our dining hall at school. Like
I want to see this photo. Is there like a photo of it?
No. Yeah, I wish there was, but I don't know. I just remember every time I would go in there, I felt deeply that this painting was like cursed. Like I was absolutely certain that one day I might like just die by this painting.
You're like walking by it and they're like watching you move through the hall.
Yeah. Oh, it was very that because something about the way it was painted did have that kind of like everyone looked like they were following you around the room kind of effect. Yeah, it was weird. I don't know if it was painted by like
Shining-esque kind of
photo. I don't know if it's like painted by a former student or like a teacher or like why it was there. But anyway,
I just horrendous photo here.
I just had to tell this story because every time I watch Provenance, I think of it because yeah.
That's unfortunate. I knew it had to be ghastly for you to think of it based on seeing this portrait because this portrait is just horrendous. I don't understand it. But no, like, so nobody was ever haunted by this painting except just like by having to view it. It's like nothing else
Yeah, yeah.
happened.
No,
Okay.
no. As far as I know, there was no like incidents related, like directly connected to it, but it just gave like absolutely cursed vibes.
That's
That's just to
so
say that.
funny. The vibes were off.
Yes. No, nothing has ever been more like no vibes have ever been more off than this painting. Let's
Oh
just put it that way.
my goodness. Okay. Well, I mean, that's a great way to start talking about this portrait. So the first
Yes.
note that I made was like, do none of these people own curtains? Because like every single room is just full of like blind shadows. And I was like, would curtains be good for them shooting in places with like blinds? Because why are they're all going into all these rooms with zero curtains and it looks weird to me. Like one of the first scene is essentially like leading up to a sex scene. The guy is like,
Mhm.
he's taking his pants off, he's like in his boxers, she's taking her shirt off, and they're going
Mhm.
into different rooms and the blinds are just open. And I was like, why do none of these people have curtains? It's very strange, but it's very like a CW thing because I feel like there's blind shadows on every TV show I've ever watched on the
Right.
CW. I don't get it. Whatever, it's fine. I love this that we open up with like kind of quintessential like Dean hitting on girls in a bar, Sam researching with a
Mhm.
beer. We are so back.
Oh yeah. So I did make one note about like the painting in the introduction, which
Mm-hmm.
was that I wish we hadn't seen the dad physically move because I just didn't think the effect was very good, and B, I think it would have been creepier if it had been more like a kind of weeping angels, which they kind of do later
Mm-hmm.
on, where it's like
Oh,
you look and he's in one position and then you look back and he's in another and you
yes.
don't see the painting move.
Right.
They do that. They kind of do that later on. I think that's way scarier and way more effective, especially like for the first introduction. I think like, oh, the painting moves, and it's kind of like lost the. I don't know. It's lost the scariness for me.
Yeah, I think
And
it's
it's
more.
such a solid concept. Like it's such a
Mhm.
solid, scary concept of like something is moving in the painting,
Yeah, and things are
and it.
changing, like artifacts
Yeah,
are
yeah,
like
yeah.
missing, and like the painting in the background of the painting is changing.
Yeah.
I
But that's
think
way
that
scarier if you don't see it.
yeah, because it's you start kind of gaslighting yourself too. So then it's like
Yes,
not just like
exactly.
a fear, like a frightening thing that it's like this shouldn't be happening because you shouldn't be able to move, but then you're also questioning like, did I see it this way? Am I imagining things? Am
Exactly,
I going
exactly.
crazy? So yeah,
Yeah,
I
as
love
an
it.
audience member, I would have felt like way more creeped out if I'd had that. And you can make it obvious. You can make it kind of be like for the audience, you can make it a bit more like okay, it's fairly obvious that it's moved, but it still makes your brain kind of question itself a bit more. Whereas obviously, yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
um,
So the boys start out by kind of like really settling into their roles of the
yes.
hunt in a bar. And Dean's kind of being a little skeezy. He's pretending to be a reality show, like scout looking for hot
Oh,
girls.
Dean.
And I do think Dean ends up having like a menage a trois like that night. Like he goes home with two
It's certainly.
girls.
Oh well, we know that he does canonically later on as well.
Yeah,
Like
but
there's
this
the
might be, I mean,
twins.
early as can be. This is like
Yeah,
season
yeah,
one,
yeah.
and
But
he's sleeping
I'm
with
just
two at a time.
I'm just saying it's a pattern. This is like his like I guess one non-vanilla sex preference.
Well, and then there's Dean, there's like Sam's just like, hey, did you have a good night? Because like Dean's like literally hung over in the front seat, and Sam comes in and lays on the horn and like
Oh, I love it.
is giggling and laughing, like,
Yeah, like shitty little brother Sam Winchester.
very
You will
cute.
always be famous to me.
You
Like
will
I love
always be
you.
famous. What I do want to touch on in that first scene, though, is really
Mm-hmm.
cute because I know you have opinions about Dean kind of pushing Sam to get with someone.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that as well. But in the first scene, it was interesting because at first he kind of starts to kind of being playful. He's like, come on, there's enough girls for us here.
Mm-hmm.
I got both their number for us. And Sam's like, I can get my own dates. And instead of making fun of him and being like, yeah, right, Dean goes, no, I know you can, but you don't.
But you
And I
don't. Yeah.
think it's weirdly sweet of him because he admits that he knows Sam is actually good with girls and could
Mm-hmm.
get a girl if he wants to. Um, And I think what it comes to, and it's clear very immediately, is that he's concerned about Sam.
Yeah.
Um, and
My oh
I said, let's please remember this, that his girlfriend died within the year, though. So cool it. But like at the same time,
yeah,
like I do think it's kind of sweet in Dean's own way. What he's trying to do is express like his concern for Sam.
I feel that Dean's heart is very much in the right place in this
Yeah.
whole episode. Like, I very much appreciate what he's trying to do. I don't. I think that the way that he's going about it is the complete wrong way to go about it for Sam.
Yeah.
Um, and also, it makes me feel a little bit because it's the thing is, in this case, Sam does fancy the girl,
Mm-hmm.
right? But he
Yes.
was kind of doing the same thing, but just a bit grosser in Shadow.
Yes.
Where yeah, and I feel like in some ways this feels better just because like circumstantially we know that Sam actually wants this.
Mm-hmm.
But in some ways it's kind of the same behavior. And one feels a lot worse than the other.
Yeah,
But
Shadow is disgusting.
yeah, but I do feel like the motivation behind it in this episode is very sweet. And
What
I
I would
completely see where Dean's coming from. But I think that it highlights the fact that as much as we like to think that Sam and Dean know each other better than any other people in the world, they don't always understand each other.
Yeah,
And I think
I would never say that they understand each other better
no,
than
but
anyone.
I think particularly Dean in
No,
these
yeah,
early
no.
seasons does not understand Sam, and it feels very similar to me as in Faith, where Dean is doing the I'm gonna like put on a brave face, I'm gonna like
Yeah.
make jokes, and Sam has to kind of say to him, "Please stop doing that." Um,
Right.
it's like this is how I think Dean would want somebody to approach this, but it's
Yes.
not right for Sam.
This is what
Um,
Dean tends to understand experiences by relating them to his own. And so I
yes,
think that's why he does discover so much about Sam through this first season when they're back together, because he has
absolutely.
to see for the first time in a lot of ways firsthand why Sam does the things that he does. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what I would parallel this to, I wouldn't parallel it to Shadow really as much as I would parallel this situation with Sarah to Dean's situation with Cassie
Sure.
and Sam doing literally kind of the same thing that Dean is doing in this episode. And
Mm-hmm.
when it gets serious, both brothers go, "Oh, okay." And I
Sure.
think
Yeah, yeah.
what's really sweet, in my opinion, with Dean, that was not present in Shadow, especially because Sam never even showed actual interest in Meg in Shadow. That was just kind of Dean projecting
Mm-hmm.
because I guess he thought Meg was hot. They both kind of are trying to push their brother towards what they believe is a healthy move. And both
Yes.
of the brothers do end up agreeing with the other in that time and doing kind of taking that advice in their own time
Yeah.
and their own way. So I saw it kind of like that. It was like the answer to Route 666 for
Sure.
Sam. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll get to it, but at the same time we're already talking about it. But it's kind of
yeah.
like how Sam's like, you really need to back off. Like, what is the point? It's not even about do I like her or not. Like, we will just end up leaving. And so I think then again, it's
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
Sam implying he longs for a steady, secure, dependable future. And
Yeah.
if that is not something that he can start something within, like those parameters, like he is not
Mm-hmm.
interested in that. And once he explains that, Dean's like, okay, look, I get it, but let's not pretend that's all that's going on here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want you to think that I've forgotten about Jess. I know that you're still feeling this way about her,
Mm-hmm.
but wouldn't she want you to be happy? And I think once we get away from how like Dean tends to want to approach a situation and he hears Sam out, then he comes to Sam where Sam's at. They're able to
Oh
get
yeah.
a point. And I really, really loved that moment.
Yes. That moment I absolutely love. Like yeah. Once I think once he twigs really what's going on, and also like I think it makes him lock into what's more of the right approach
Yeah.
then it's lovely, and I love where he's coming from. I still think after that bit, he still needs to cool it a bit, where he keeps like turning up and then being like, marry that girl, Sam, and it's just like, Dean, we need to stow the excitement. I did write several times, God bless you, Dean. You are weirdly obsessed with your brother's sex life.
Yeah, he is a little bit too much into that, and for my taste, for my taste.
Yes. but I do love Weirdo Dean, so you know.
He's really trying to be encouraging.
He is. I did say about the scene with it in the bar at the beginning where like Dean's hitting on the girls and Sam's researching. Like how much of Sam's, especially like late teens, once Dean was like old enough to get a fake ID, and maybe Sam is also like maybe on that verge as well.
Mhm.
Like how much of Sam's late teens do you think were spent in this exact situation? Like Dean
Yeah.
hitting on people at a bar and Sam sat in a corner researching. Like I just know that they've been doing that for a long time.
Yeah. They know exactly the roles that they're gonna fall into and where they're
Yes,
both comfortable.
exactly. But it's just like I can just see like little like 15-year-old Sam just like sat in the corner of a bar, just rolling his eyes at Dean hitting on women. Like, it's true.
Hmm.
Poor little Bean.
So when they go on this date, Sam and Sarah connect on, well, first of all, let's let's talk about how cute Sam is when he asks her on the date. Like, um,
Yes.
I think like at one point they have to go break into the warehouse and they do all this checking of like the paintings and things like that.
Hmm.
And then the next morning, Dean pretends to have lost his ID at the warehouse. So they have to go back during the day to get it back. And Sam is just like, I cannot believe that you, oh my gosh, how could you do this? And
Yep.
then like him being like, oh wait, here's that $5 I owe you, like letting him know
That
once
was
Sam is
smooth.
physically standing in front of Sarah with nowhere to run, that he has his license and he's
Yeah.
like, cut out. And so they end up, having to go on a date and it's so cute.
Yeah.
And he's very nervous with the wine list and
Oh, that bit was so sweet.
and
Like,
then she orders a beer to like kind of ease his nerves. Like it's very cute.
yeah. I love that bit. Yeah, I do also think actually it's that bit was I like that bit because I've seen sometimes in fandom people like accuse Sam of classism, which
Oh,
is so funny
really?
because like it's not as if him and Dean don't have the exact same upbringing.
There's one moment, and I think I know what you're talking about. There is one moment where he's asked a question by Sarah, like he
Mm,
like and she makes it wrong. She says like she makes a comment incorrectly to him to test him and he knows the answer.
yeah.
And then later Dean's like, okay, dang, art freak. And he's like, I took an art class in college. It's a good way to meet girls. And like there's no like condescension in his answer. There's like,
No.
so I like when they say that, I do think they're basing it in this episode kind of in like in some
Yeah.
regard. And it's like he wasn't even being a dick about it. He was like, no, it's a good way to meet girls. Like he wasn't even, there's no sense of classism or elitism in the fact that he knows that.
No. And the way he's clearly so awkward in the restaurant, and the idea of like
Mm-hmm.
having to order off the wine menu and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like it's all very clearly supposed to be indicating that like he feels out of his like class position in this setting.
Yep.
Like that's why he feels awkward, because he has never had to do this probably.
Yeah.
um you know
Uh-huh.
Poor love.
So one of the things I was going to point out is when Sarah and Sam go on their first date, they kind
Mhm.
of connect via tragedy because she has lost her mother, I think, in the last year,
Yes.
and obviously Sam has lost his girlfriend in the last year tragically. So he doesn't open up as much to her in the first
Hmm.
like at first. He doesn't actually open up to her at all until after she just has to know the truth that they're hunters because shit gets real a little bit later. But she says that she sat around being very sad and depressed and grieving for a long time. And what brought her out of it and she started dating again was because she knew that she says it's not what my mom would have wanted for me. And
Yeah.
I know that that was going to be a parallel that was brought up later about Jess, and it was brought up by Dean.
Yes. I will say also I love the way that when Sarah's talking about her mother, so we get a good like, you know, Sam empathetic face of understanding.
Yes.
Um but you can feel the way Jared plays it, you can feel like almost like the lump in Sam's throat at the thought of having to reciprocate this and
Yes.
having to bring up Jess because he's still so deep in the grieving process
Yes.
that like just even having to think about it I love the fact that you can kind of see that going on even though he doesn't bring it up, he doesn't say it. I feel like you can feel that like thought process that's going on behind the scenes of, oh, do I have
Mm-hmm.
to reciprocate this, do I have to bring up Jess,
I agree with you
you know.
so much. And it's probably really hard for him because he doesn't talk about it at all. So the longer you
Mm-hmm.
go without kind of talking about something that traumatic, the harder it is when you finally do, which is why I think it's so good that, Dean did finally say, look, can we just be honest? And like, I'm not just trying to be like a weird, pushy big brother, but like, you're punishing yourself. And I didn't know Jessica. And he even admits too, he's like, I've never lost anyone in that way.
Yeah.
But like I can imagine she wouldn't want you to be unhappy forever. And I think,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. I just love that connection that we get a moment of that with Sarah where we start to kind of see Sam's thought process of, oh, I haven't thought about what Jess would want for me. I've only thought about how guilty I feel about Jess's,
Yes.
demise. And then Dean echoing that. I think it took maybe both of those things for Sam to think, oh, okay,
Yeah.
maybe I can start moving towards, coming out of
Yeah.
it.
And it's a very real and very like common feeling
Mm-hmm.
when people lose you know, a romantic partner, that the first time that you let yourself move on feels like cheating.
Yeah, it
Like it
feels weird.
feels like a you know, an actual betrayal
Yeah.
because that person is still, you know, so present
Mm-hmm.
in your
And
life
even no matter what
in
kind of loss, it's like, how can I be happy? Is it a betrayal in general just to be happy again?
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like if I stop the grieving process, does that mean, or
Is
not
that
stop, but if I let
disloyal
myself
or
starting to heal, like does that
mm-hmm.
mean that I didn't like love them
love
enough?
them?
I
Or
didn't
does that
feel
mean that they're
that sadness
disappearing? Like I've gone
enough.
through
Yeah.
that where like I've lost people, and when my cousin died, I remember when I that was a terrible year for me because I mean he was 29, I was 20,
Mm.
24, 25. And I remember when I first started feeling like happy again, I started getting really nervous that it meant I was forgetting, and
Yes.
it's part of the process. Like you can't avoid that part of the process. And I think some people really, really hesitate to enter that part of the process of healing because the sadness and the grief you feel is such a comfort. Um, because at least it means like this is that big part of grief at the beginning is the closest you're going to be to them for the rest
Yeah.
of your life. And when you
Mm-hmm.
start moving away from that, it feels like you're leaving them behind. So I definitely understand why it's taken 18,
Yeah.
19 episodes to get to this
Yeah.
point, even just to even think about it. It's
Absolutely.
so sad.
Yeah. I actually wrote like a little like Sam Jess kind of fic thing
You did.
actually
You had to.
about the like about Sam's process of
Yes.
like loss. So it literally like the concept of it is that like you that the first part of loss is like you lose a piece of yourself that's so big that everyone can see it.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone immediately is, you know, there and they're offering you that kind
Mm-hmm.
of like grief and support. But then you have those smaller pieces that you
Mm-hmm.
lose over time, and those are the bits that you feel in some ways more guilty for as you feel like you're losing them, and also they're the ones that other people can't see. So
Mm-hmm.
I saw this again recently because I was going through my like fic archive, and I had a line that I just like, so you can all hear it. You can cut this out, Audrey, if you want.
No, I want you to share the
um,
link so we can put it in the
okay, I will.
caption.
But yeah, basically it has this line towards the end where it says like, and your brother looks at you and he wonders why your face suddenly falls, and you think that I can't remember if she kept the spoons in the left or the right hand drawer.
No.
It isn't big enough of an answer. Yeah, so anyway,
Ooh,
like
yeah, that's tough, girl.
yeah, so if you want to hurt yourself, go read the I
Yeah,
think it's not
it's
good.
beautiful. Well, Sam fans know better than I mean, Supernatural fans know how to deal with pain and dole it out too.
Yeah, yeah. So Sam in Hookman says about it feels like everyone around me dies.
Yes.
Yeah, this isn't actually the first time that you said it, but I feel like this is the first time where it's felt more explicitly like Sam is beginning to feel like maybe he might be the cause of
Yes.
that, as
Oh,
opposed to just like this is a thing that happens around me. This feels like now he's starting to put that onto himself, and I do wonder whether or not this is related to the fact that since Hookman we've had the beginning of Sam's like psychic powers starting to express themselves. We've had Nightmare, and whether or not this is starting to really trigger Sam's like feelings of being an outsider and being a freak and being, as we know he felt in his childhood, like unclean, and whether or not some of that
oh,
is starting to like seep into then how he's feeling about why all of this death is happening around him. I'm
yes.
sorry, this is so serious for like a really
I
lovely
mean,
happy episode, but
it's really, I mean, but he speaks to very large themes that come up
yeah.
throughout the rest. So I mean, like it's
um
relevant.
yeah, you brought up about the fact that obviously he says about like what's the point, Dean, we're always going to leave.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you that some again I think there's a lot actually going on in this. It's about his grief. It's about his desperate like desire for stability. Um, it's about his fear of people around him dying, and I think some of it is also actually to do with the fact that we as the audience and Dean at this point don't know, in some ways, don't know just um how committed Sam was to Jess. We don't know at this point, and Dean doesn't know that Sam planned to marry her.
Right.
That, like a long term girlfriend. I can see that Dean obviously understands that that's extremely painful, but I think perhaps if he knew, like Sam literally had been looking for rings and was planning to propose, that's like another level of, in some ways,
Yeah.
it
Well,
gets,
it
yeah.
gets really real. In Dean's eyes, that would be like extremely real because that would be
Yes.
like settling down suburbs, like kids.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that ties into this thing about Sam saying about what's the point, and this idea about stability,
Yeah,
because
and
like
Dean's answer to that is, well, fun. You can have fun. And to Sam, like, I think, he's like, well, that's not fun to me. And maybe it just reminds him of what he can't actually ever have in a
yeah,
long-term scenario. I don't know.
and I think no, it's reflective of like his whole life of I
Mm-hmm.
think wanting to be able to make connections with people, and then knowing that and I think he does. I think he's learned to make connections with people very quickly,
Mm-hmm.
but knowing that they very rarely are going to be able to last because they're going to be on to the next place.
Yeah.
Um, and I think some of like what's behind this feeling is his desire for stability, but knowing that like Jess was the first person who ever gave him that. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, and so that's the first time, not just Jess, but like being at Stanford in general. He had friends,
Mm.
he had this kind of like stability and connections, lasting connections outside of the family unit.
Yes.
And I think that's why it hurts so much and why he's hesitant to allow himself to move on, because it's not just like he's losing Jess again, but he's losing like that last connection to
Mm-hmm.
safety, that safety and stability that she
Yeah.
represents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he says that to Sarah. He's like, look, like, I can't go through it again. That's the exact line is he's like, I am he, he's like, you shouldn't date me because you could end up hurt. Everyone around me ends up hurt. He lists like his mom, he
Hmm.
lists Jess. But then he's like, I can't go through it again. Like you being close to me opens up the possibility that you will be hurt and that I will be hurt again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he goes, still think
Um,
I'm a catch? I just love
um,
Sarah being with them because she basically just kind of
yes.
puts them in their place and consistently just like impresses
Yeah.
Dean, surprises Sam. Like she's just fantastic. I wish she
I
was always there.
love her.
I
I
do
love
too.
her. I am bitter that they killed her off when they brought her back in season
It's
8.
disgusting. This is what I want
Yeah.
Eric Kripke to answer for stuff like that. I know he wasn't on the show anymore, but like the
No.
way that they treat women in these early, like first 5 seasons that he was on. Today we talked in the chat. I want to bring this up, even though it's going to
Yep.
be August when you guys are listening to it. Today it's June 21st, and Kripke was actually quoted saying, "Yeah, trolls, y'all can go like, what did he say? Like, fuck off to the sun or something. Like, go fuck yourselves."
Yeah.
Because they were trolling one of his major female like actors on set of The Boys, and I was just like, this is incredible. Like we have a creator telling like whiny sexist fans to go literally go fuck off, we don't want you watching our show anyway anymore, you know. And I'm
Yeah.
looking back at this show and I'm like, I love that energy. I would love to sit down and talk to him about this creation
Yes.
in terms of like how
Absolutely.
we've evolved. It would be really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. It would definitely. Yeah, I feel like at this point Sarah is like one of the female characters who gets off better, which
Yeah,
almost
true.
makes it which kind of almost makes it worse that
Yeah.
they literally bring her back just to kill her, and
Ugh.
it makes it even worse that Sam literally has this whole conversation with her about like everyone around me dies, and then she doesn't, and that's comforting, and then she comes back and then she immediately dies. Like, why are we doing this?
Why
Why are we doing?
indeed? Jesus.
um, but yes, I did say in the group chat, like I have like 5 pages of notes for this, so it's not all. I promise it's not all like deep and serious reflections on the nature of grief and me being extremely into my Sam Jess feels, which I am at all times always. So like I love Sam Jess.
Me too. I love them
Um,
together.
but yes, I about 90% of this notes is literally just me commenting on Sam's tiny little squish face. Like I feel like this is a high like
Precious.
precious face episode. Yeah, and he's so smitten with
Mm-hmm.
Sarah. Like even
Mm-hmm.
before he's really willing to admit to himself, like the way he's looking at her, he's just like a little smitten kitten, and it's so cute.
It's so good. I love when he is tricked to go back to the warehouse and like
Yeah.
he's kind of awkward, but then he sees the painting and he goes, "Oh my God."
Oh
And
my god, yeah, sorry. I literally, I really meant to bring this up.
Sarah's like,
I'm so
"What?"
glad you did.
And he does it so loud, which is so funny because like that isn't normally Sam. You can tell he's so on edge because he's like so out of sorts about her, but then also so out of sorts about the hunt because he's like, I literally like destroyed that last night. And it's just so fun because he's so surprised and distressed and spluttery. It's just the
I
best.
know. My note on that was just tiny awkward bee, Sam, my
He's,
beloved son. Like,
he was like, that painting, it looks so good.
yeah, it's like the intonation of it as well. Like you can see like the gears in his head desperately trying to get him back out of this situation, and he
But also doesn't look so good. So it's even stupider. It's like, that's the worst painting any of us have ever seen. So what are you talking
exactly.
about?
It's brilliant. I love
So
it.
good. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, and also, Sarah, I said at the beginning, like I wanted to bring this up. Like this to me is like a really good Sam's Big Beautiful Brain episode.
Yeah.
Um, so like I love the way that he just like there's so much like bits where he just like recalls information like that, and you're like, oh yes.
Mhm.
So like when he's first talking to Sarah, and he just like digs this like art. I mean, maybe he took that art history class, you know, not that long before he went on the road with Dean. But like they've been on the road a little
I
while,
don't
whatever.
think
Like
so. I think because he's 22, that was probably something he had to get early on as his like
that's what I
basics.
yeah,
So I
that's what I
think
was
it
gonna
was a
say
while
because I
back.
yeah, I was going to say I don't know exactly how the American system works, but that's my understanding is that kind of course would be like an earlier one. So
Hmm.
that was quite a few years ago, and he just like, and he's not had to use it for a while.
Yep.
He's been hunting, and he just like it just
Yep.
straight
Right
off
off the
the
top of the
yeah.
dome.
So I did indeed write. God, the way he retains information is so important. Brackets and sexy to me. Brackets neurodivergent. Yes, I have a lot of feelings about like Sam as being like neurodivergent. I
Hmm.
think specifically autistic, and to me, there's a lot of that in this episode. Like the he, I wrote this whole bit actually about how so we've said like before about how the exposition on this show is really good and how like they often work it very naturally into dialogue, but
Hmm.
obviously there is some times where you need to just like give an info dump.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like mechanically you need that,
Mhm.
and a lot of like monster of the week shows have a character whose job is to be like, you are the person who does the info dump, and obviously like Sam is generally that person
Yeah.
in this
He's the
show.
so get this guy.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a lot of times in which that comes off very stilted. Like if you
Hmm.
just like read that off the script, you can feel like the hand of the writer. Um, and I think that one of the things that for me, at least, and this could just be me extremely projecting, because listeners, if you have not guessed by my entire being, I am autistic. So, um, but yeah, so the way to me that Sam relays infodumps feels extremely authentic to the way that Sam communicates.
Hmm.
It doesn't, I never feel the hand of the writer when he does it, or very, very rarely, maybe sometimes in later seasons where it's not quite as well written. But like the delivery of it and the way that he does it
Hmm.
always feels extremely authentic to Sam as a person and as how he communicates. And there's always a little bit of that sense of like excitement when he's doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just raw like information. He is like, there's a little bit of like, oh yes, I get to say this, I get to, and you know, we see him kind of doing like, you know, the get this and the like, oh, and another thing, and like, you know, it's yeah, it gives me good, happy, squishy neurodivergent feels, and I love it. Yeah, and I will also say that like often the best written like autistic or neurodivergent characters on TV are ones that are not nobody intended to write them that way.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, often also I either like the actor or the writer. Often
Right.
it turns out maybe neurodivergent. I won't speculate too much on that, but I have feelings, you know, with that regard. But um, but yeah, I love it. And there's so much of that in this episode, and the way that he like makes connections between things.
Hmm.
So when I said about like sorry, I am currently info dumping everyone. So
That's what a
again,
podcast is.
I know you can hear me though. I'm getting so excited about it. So when you were saying about like Sam's, you know, they look in John's journal and they find something. What
Hmm.
was very notable to me in this episode was that it wasn't just like he looks in the journal, he finds like, oh, here's the monster that Dad's seen before. You read the entry and you get it. In this, what had happened was he had read in Dad's journal some previous incidences of the painting, of similar things going on.
Yes.
But then he read those. He told Dean about them. Then he gets hold of the. It's when he gets hold of the provenances, and
Yes.
then he looks at those. He reads those, and he makes that connection in his brain between the names and the dates on those provenances and the names and the
Hmm.
dates in the journal. And if you watch the scene, he doesn't look back at the journal to find that. He makes that connection. He remembers and makes that connection.
Yeah.
So
It's like
yeah, I
this
love that.
crazy like pattern recognition that he's able to do. He's
Yeah.
like, "Oh," and it all like lights up like pins on a map for him. Like he can just make those
Yes.
connections in by
Yes.
like just reading the words.
Same, Sam. Absolute same. I will tell you, I have always deeply, deeply connected to Sam, but
Mhm.
it's been so interesting coming back to this show after like 7 years, right? Like
Mhm.
I may have rewatched it once or twice in that time, but at the time that I first watched this show and was first engaging in the fandom, I did not know that I was autistic. Coming back to this show, knowing that now, and then
Yeah.
rewatching it, has been wild for my like feelings towards Sam. So
That's so like
it's
nice though. It's like
yeah,
so nice to come back and feel like things click into place a little bit.
yeah. It's like all of those things that I was like, oh, I really relate to this with Sam. I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, that's why I relate to it. Like,
Right.
you know, and,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying like you have to feel that way about him, but that's how that like personally connects through to
Yeah.
me.
Everybody has
Um,
their reasons for who their favorite
exactly.
character is. And so
Yeah.
that
I
makes a
mean,
lot of sense.
also he's a second son. My God,
Mhm.
I should have said this in my original introduction when we were talking about like why were you drawn to Sam or whatever. Like me and second sons, I have a thing. Like Faramir, Peter Petrelli from Heroes. Like give me a second son maligned by their father, and I
Yeah.
will love them forever. There is
Faramir. Oh
nothing
my
more.
God. Faramir's like the ultimate second son because like his dad straight up told him to his face, like, yeah, I wish it were you who were dead, not your
Yeah,
brother
I think
Faramir.
Denethor might be the only father worse than John Winchester.
Yeah,
Like,
he's definitely got the crown. And
yeah,
John is
yeah,
like coming for it, but I think Denethor's always gonna keep it. He's the
yeah.
worst one.
But yeah, any like Sam Winchester, Peter Petrelli fans out there, if you want to go, I have a tag on Tumblr for this.
But if
many
you want to
many
get
connections.
sad, if you want to get sad with Vic, she will
These
usher you.
these these two boys who are so very very similar.
Oh
Also,
my
I love the
God.
fact that like Milo and Jared were both on
It's,
Gilmore Girls
it's
together,
just
and then they end up playing like
yeah, isn't
characters that are
just
so similar.
Dean and Jess on like
Yes, exactly.
that's what I thought. I was like, Peter
Yeah,
Petrelli, that's that little like Jess man, right?
yeah. Their characters are like there are so many similarities, Audrey. Like
Yeah,
it's beautiful. Anyway.
that's so cute. Well, I have like I compare Sam to Aiden on the US version of being human. So Aiden
Okay.
Waite is the kind of archetype. My archetype is different. Because I
Mhm.
don't like birth order, I don't know, whatever. Like I don't care about their dads. But if he's like a tall, beautiful, sad boy who gets
Is Aid
tormented by the guy who plays Lucifer, he's also on Being Human and he sires Aiden. Like
so
that's
Aiden's the vampire character, right? Because I know
yeah,
the
he
British
is.
version of Being Human. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
he is.
I
And
can imagine.
it's very similar. I was like, wow, they really are like the punching bag of their shows, and they are always my favorite.
Yeah, yeah.
My
I
type
do
is
remember.
whatever makes me the most sad.
I do definitely remember having. I don't remember if his name was also Aiden. I can't remember, but I
I
do
feel like
definitely
the
remember having
actor's
a
name is Aiden.
okay.
I
Yeah,
think
I
that
do
was the
remember having
connection.
a soft spot for the equivalent character in the
Hmm.
British version of Being Human. So
Well, then he goes on to play. He's also in The Hobbit, but then he goes on to also play. Doesn't he play? He plays Poldark, which had me by the throat in 2018.
yeah.
Curly haired boys who fell in love with fiery redheaded women. I was like, this is my aesthetic. That was like during Game of Thrones. My Poldark literally was stepping on my neck the
Yes.
whole time. Anyways, okay, let's go back. Let's go back. So I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about why is Sam's hair like that? I said, what's with Sam's very straight hair in the scene? No floof, only straight bowl cut.
I'm going to be honest. I didn't notice. I think I
I
was
was
too
like,
distracted by his face. He was so
he's
squishy
so
and lovely,
cute.
and
Well, and so then I go, oh no, we're back to that ugly faded vertical stripe shirt. Meanwhile, Sarah's braids are
yes.
amazing. So
I did very specifically note the shirt. I will say though, him in his when he's in the suit in the restaurant. I mean, we will obviously we'll talk about this more in the fashion judgment, but when he's in the suit
mhm.
in the restaurant, it's like, oh my god, Tiny Bab in his tiny little suit,
It looks like
whatever.
that memory he has in Dark Side of the Moon where he's in like fifth grade and he's wearing like a nice
Yeah.
outfit to go to dinner with a friend. Like he looks
Yes.
like a child.
But when they're back in the hotel and he's
Mhm.
got the jacket off and he's just in the shirt,
Mm.
That's hot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it was the jacket that was the issue. Like, just the button-down shirt, that's a good look.
Strip
Like
him
the
down,
white
and
button-down shirt.
I don't mean that disrespectfully, but strip him down to like.
I think you do, Audrey.
No, I really don't. I swear to God, Jared, if you're listening, I swear to God, respectfully, just wear.
I've seen your Soda Sam posts.
Hey, that was the before me. I am a much better person now.
I know. I'm just teasing you.
Jared said himself, Solus was a tiger. He knows.
He did.
Knows. Oh my God. No, but like he always does look a little bit better if you're just in a t-shirt. Like get a v-neck. When he discovers v-necks in the season 4, thank you, Jesus. You know, like get him out of those goddamn pearl snaps and those weird vertical striped shirts. Like, no.
Yeah, there is a reason that like the Supernatural fandom has like basically like a tag for like Winchesters in single layers.
Yeah, because it's so rare.
Which is such a fucking funny tag to have. Like, oh my God, they're in a single layer. But yeah, like.
Well, if we weren't constantly being like, why is Dean in 3 shirts? Then it wouldn't be a thing. But we're like, finally, a normal amount of shirts to be wearing.
Yeah.
But I get it. They are recording. They're like, they're in Vancouver. So I get that they're supposed to be looking like they're in like, the Midwest in America, but they're literally.
Yeah.
I get it. But still.
Yeah.
All right. We've got to finish talking about this episode because we're about to be like.
We do. I was just thinking that.
Okay. Can we nearly 2 full meetings? So we got to like.
Oh my God.
Do final thoughts and then we'll rate it. Yeah.
Okay, final thoughts. Low sodium freaks, because it has to be brought up.
Yes, it's so
low sodium freaks. Sam line of all time. It's again, it's another one of those ones where I think just raw in the script, it might not have been that funny, but like the way that Jared delivers it,
he's mad.
Like Sam is so mad.
He's so frustrated. He's like, "How am I supposed to save my new girlfriend if there's no stuff?"
Like it's just. It's so funny and I love it. I definitely remember like we did like a bit of Sam Girl Club like top 5 Sam Snark moments, and I think that was like my number 1. Like I love it.
It's a good one.
It's just so quintessential. Like
Well, what about this snarky moment where Sarah's like, she's like, "Hey, wait, we used to look at these dolls. Like my dad used to like take these dolls in and like appraise these dolls," and Sam's like, "That's fascinating, Sarah, but relevant right now." I'm good. Oh, why? Yes. Well, yes, actually, Sam. Like, what a big thing this. She's like, excuse me, they have the little girl's hair on them. You're welcome.
I did also make this is like the nerdiest comment that I will ever make on this show. So I believe that Audrey mentioned that I am a doctor of archaeology early on, right? So my specialism is ancient and historical glass, and I literally made a note when Dean like broke the glass. 19th century glass would not break like that. It immediately threw me out. I was like, this is so obviously sugar glass. Like the way it like fractures is so like it should break like greenhouse glass. Like it should break into really horrible, massive shards that are gonna like stab you.
Kill you. That is so funny that you brought that up. I would have never known.
No.
That's so
like
funny.
Me and one other person in the entire world who's ever had that thought.
You're the Leo gift. You're like, hey, no, that's so funny because that was like Dean forgetting how to use a gun, where like he was trying to pistol whip the window, and then, like,
I loved that bit.
Gonna go out to the Impala to grab a shovel, and instead he's like, wait,
yeah,
just shoot it because what's wrong with me? He even goes, come on, Dean. Like it was so funny.
I want to say that I really want to give Jensen props to this episode for it. I think this is the first episode I can think of where they really like tapped into Jensen's physical comedy ability.
Yeah, and it's so good.
Something that I will always give Jensen props for is his like physical comedy. He is so fucking funny. Like the bit at the beginning where he's like shoving food in his mouth and he's like, what? Like
unbothered, not trying to keep their color at all.
And I think that them letting him do that on this episode probably opened a few doors in the writers' minds where they were like, oh, we need to do this more. And like, thank God, funny. Yeah.
It's so not right that he's so hot and he can be so funny and goofy. It's really, really, it's really alien.
Yeah. I was just going to say, it's always so funny to me that like Jared is so like goofy in real life, but
Mm-hmm.
he has like said several times that he finds like that kind of like more like comedic, especially like that kind of like very like physical comedy in
Mm-hmm.
acting, like really awkward. Like, yeah, it's just
Yes.
funny, isn't it?
Yes. Like I think it's probably because it's more natural for him to just in conversation be silly that when you're
Yeah.
trying to act it, it feels inauthentic and weird. And
Yes.
I don't know. I can't wait for us to get to the episode in season 6, I guess, where they have to pretend to act as actors playing the characters.
Yeah.
Like Sam is playing Jared playing Sam.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Once we
can't
get
remember what
to
it's
French
called.
Mistake.
That's
French
right. I was like,
Mistake.
it starts with an F and it's such a weird title, but
We have to get as far as season 6 for
we
Solar Sam,
we're
and we have to get there for
absolutely
French
gonna get there.
Mistake.
We have to go. I want to at least go through 7 because I love Charlie and she comes in 7. So I would love to go.
Yeah.
I'd love to keep
I
watching forever if people want to listen. I
yeah.
haven't ever
I
finished the series.
I would definitely like to get like at least to the 8 because I'd love us to cover Sacrifice.
Yeah, I feel like through 8, oh God, it's so painful. But like
Yeah.
like Sam doing the trials is really interesting.
Just us all weeping the entire time, but like
Yeah, it's like we can't, no one knows what we're saying. We're just like
yeah. Yeah. Okay, I have like maybe like 2 other notes that I just want to really bring up, if that's
okay,
okay.
go
They're
ahead.
very, very quick.
Okay.
Yeah. So they say about the painting, wherever this goes, people die, and I just wrote down in all caps themes, because of course we have like the theme of Sam feeling like he's cursed, and like where he goes, people dies. So
Yep.
I did note that as a good little bit of like thematic storytelling going on there.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, I did also love the fact that Sam knows about the whole like tradition of like leaving dolls in crypts for small like
Yes.
for children. Again, like big beautiful brain moment, very autistic moment. Like, where did you learn this information, Sam? I love you so much. um, and the last thing I wanted to bring up just very quickly was that scene with Sam and Sarah where he gets the eyelash off her face.
I literally
Oh
wrote that
my
down
god.
and I was like, what Irish thing? Go
Yeah,
yourself. Like I was like, how dare you? How dare you?
yeah. I thought that you probably had a note as well, so I thought I need to bring it up just so we've said
I
it.
did. Mine were all in caps and like I did the key smashing
Yeah.
thing where I was like, make a wish, go fuck yourself. Like I was just like, how could this be so precious? It's too much.
Yeah, and I did also have when they kissed, I did also have in all caps, his hand is bigger than her whole head.
Yes, yes. I put he scrunchy nose kissed her because you know how he
Yes,
scrunchy. It's very
he
cute.
does.
All right. Well, I
Okay.
feel like we do kind of know where this is headed, but let's go ahead and do
Yes.
our first wardrobe judgment. Our descriptors
Okay.
are horrendous, adorable, genuinely good, or terrible but great. What did you land on for this one?
Okay, I went with a terrible but great because I think it's kind of a mixed bag.
I think you're right. Yeah.
The blue striped shirt, as you brought up already, absolutely horrendous. I think that's probably one of the worst shirts Sam owns.
It's the one that looks like it's been faded in the back of like the Impala's back window, just like fading.
Yeah.
It's awful.
I famously am Team Rusty Bacon. I am a Rusty Bacon defender, but I will not defend this shirt. Like this shirt is bad.
At least you have some sense.
Yes.
I'm anti Rusty Bacon.
Yeah. But I do feel that the suit, no, because as we said, little tiny baby in a tiny baby suit. But when he's just in the button down shirt afterwards, yes, thank God. Yes, please give it to me. And then also said extremely nice, actually.
Right.
Yeah, I appreciate his beauty.
Yes.
But I did also say that I thought that the hoodie with the purple t-shirt underneath, very cute. I wish it was purple dog shirt, but interestingly, I had noted that he wears a lot of purple t-shirts. I think he just likes the color purple.
He just likes
that's
purple. But
mixed
like,
bag.
It is. It's a mixed bag. He has that weird straight hair. They really don't know what to do with his hair right now. And that awful gray and white, like blue, like faded blue ass shirt is just so terrible. So
I
terrible but
I
great.
I bumped it up to terrible but great from just like I was like, it should it be just an adorable and that kind of evens everything out, or like cusping it. I bumped it I bumped it up to terrible but great because I felt that the blue shirt was slightly saved by the fact that he said low sodium freaks while he was wearing it. So in my mind I've made an association.
That's fair.
So
That's fair. All right. So the Sam fan friendly scale, we've got screen time, enjoyment, and then heart eyes on a scale from 1 to 5. Let's start with screen time. What did you give this?
I gave this a 4.9. I thought this was really, really good.
Yeah, it's a good one. I gave it a 4.8.
Yeah.
I agree. It's very good.
Yeah, he's cute. He's got a little squishy face. He gets
And
to
it's
like
all about him. And even Dean's parts are about setting Sam up. You know, it's you don't get much better for screen time than that with Sam.
Yeah, and he gets to bare his soul. He gets to be like cute and squishy. We get a moment of like Sam get to let go and feel happiness and let himself like move on. Like I think it's just a lovely episode. So yeah,
and we get those heart to hearts with Dean. It's really sweet. So what about for enjoyment?
Yeah, so I think that kind of ties into what I was just saying. Like again, I've given this a 4.8. Like it's just lovely. It's lovely, and even the bits that like hurt my soul because I just think about him and Jess and the depth of loss that's there. Like it's enjoyment in that like please rip my soul out, but also like you know what I mean. Like
but sew it back up again. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I love that it is a moment where he's allowed to heal.
So. Yes. I gave it my first 5 of the season is the enjoyment of this episode. I love it. I love Sam with like a romantic, like a romantic idea, like that he might get to like at least have a moment of that. And in this one, there's no pain that goes with that. Like it's all just like sweetness. And we very rarely get episodes where we get both, where it's like I get to see him being happy and cared for, and even Dean is being sweet and caring and concerned for him in his own way, and then nothing bad happens at the end to ruin it. And then heart eyes for this episode.
Oh, this is a 4.5 for me. Yeah, face of joy, like squish face of joy. He gets to like kiss, and he looks so cute. And he's so smitten. He's so smitten. So like I'm giving him heart eyes for his heart eyes. Like
right. Well, because it's just so sweet to see like him be happy and smitten. So I gave it a 4.5 for heart eyes because I don't like his hair and I don't like that shirt, but I like everything else that he did.
Yeah, I think I was so distracted by the like cute squish face of smittenness that I didn't even notice the hair.
So we rated this one. I rated overall. My average is 4.76. Yours is a 4.9 overall, which is
nice.
That's really good. And so overall, this one's rated 4.83. This is pretty close.
Very fair.
The only one higher is Faith, and again, it's because you gave it all 5s.
Yeah, that doesn't count. That was I'm not normal about Faith, so we just
Well, Faith is a great one. Great one. Okay.
Yeah, I know, but we're disrupting the scientific system.
So the group chat just sent us an article of Jared Padalecki responding to Eric Kripke, like getting excited about, hey, Jared should come on The Boys. And Jared said, the answer is yes. So like, okay, let's see it. Would love to see it.
Yes.
We are holding you to it. Breaking news 2 months ago. All right. Are you ready for Dead Man's Blood?
Are we ready for the John Winchester hate hour? Yes, I am.
Every single time I open my mouth. God. Okay, so the episode Dead Man's Blood, I'm just gonna go through it really quickly.
Yeah.
So that I can get into my like shrieking like about it. Okay.
I already said to you that like I was 5 seconds into this before like the all caps like shouting at John's side. So yeah, go.
Oh my God. So essentially this is a vampire episode, which I'm convinced, because this came out in 2006 and True Blood was published in 2008. I am fully convinced that True Blood stole their entire like lore, like vampire lore and like the whole dynamic from this episode. But anyways, there's a man called Daniel Elkins, who passes away. He's a vampire hunter. Apparently he mentored John at some point, but they were estranged. Shocker, he's estranged from everyone because everyone thinks he's a fucking asshole. And so after Elkins dies, Sam and Dean are like, well, let's go check it out because we saw his name. Like Dean recalls, like, I think I know that guy's name. So he looks in the journal, and again, they use the journal to decide what to do next. And they're like, well, let's go see. So they go, they see his house is ransacked, and this antique gun has been stolen, which their dad tells them is the Colt. And I was like, oh shit, the Colt. This is where they get the Colt. And now I understand it's not that John cared about Elkins as a mentor and wanted to pay his respects. He wanted to get that fucking gun. So they end up having big moments, the three of them, but essentially through the episode, Sam and John fight a few times, and then like John at the end kind of has to admit, like, you're right, we're better as a family. Brr, brr, brr. And they do end up getting rid of the vampire nest. And they do end up, I don't think they end up with the cult, but they do decide if we get the cult, we can destroy the thing that killed Mom. And so that's the next step in the journey.
They do have it because John he uses one of the bullets on the vampire.
That's right.
After saying that he wouldn't.
So now they do have it. The next step is to find the thing to shoot it with.
Yes.
Which I was under the influence. Well, maybe this is why, because I don't remember season 1 as well as the other, but I was under the understanding of like the Colt only had like a few bullets left. So like when John used it, I was like, shit.
He very explicitly says just before that there's 13 bullets total. So this is like it's going to be one of like the key things over season 2 is that they keep being put into situations, at least from my memory, where it's like, or they have to be like debating whether or not they can waste, one of the Colt bullets. So yeah,
I guess I'm like, how many are there? Like, how many are left? So
I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I love the Colt. Like,
the cult is a really cool thing, and it's one of those 2 machina kind of like plot devices that doesn't feel like a plot device, where like it still has enough limitations that you're like, okay, but this isn't just like Cass coming in and like erasing people's memories or whatever, like the angels get a little too powerful later. This still feels rooted in like the reality of the hunting war world.
And they were so smart to immediately establish the limitations of it by saying there are only 13 bullets, because that immediately makes it so that they can't just be using this all the time, it gives it stakes, and it gives it like every time we see them use it, we know that like that's them lessening their chances of being able to use it on the demon. So yeah, I think they were so smart in the way that they set that up. So
agree.
Yeah.
Let's just like kind of get into it. So the first thing I said about vampires in the supernatural realm, which I don't feel is going to be consistent throughout the rest of the series, what they set up is that they can walk in the sun. Drinking their blood makes you high, just like in True Blood. And that they have these weird eyes. You would never know except that they, have these weird eyes. I wrote down like a bookshelf in front of a door is not going to keep a vampire out of your house, but rescinding their invitation might. But like Daniel doesn't do that. Like they break into his house. So I guess invitations are not a thing also in this lore.
Yes. It's interesting. Supernatural clearly made some very deliberate choices to really pare down vampire lore, because it's interesting.
I don't like
because vampires are one of the few things for which like I would say there is some very established lore that is pretty common across all variants of vampires. And it's a big move to be like, we're gonna mess with that. I do agree that I think on the whole I'm not the biggest fan. I will say I think when you said that they change over time, I actually think vampires might be one, from my memory, I think vampires are one of the few like creatures that actually stay fairly consistent in Supernatural.
Don't they end up not being able to be in the sun though? I want to believe that, because I feel like changing the lore of vampires so much is such a fucking cop out, because why would you do that? You're just watering them down and making them more like everything else.
So my theory on why they did this
makes me mad.
My theory on why they did this was to very deliberately avoid comparison with Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Okay, but like you can still do that. Like I get it, but like
Yeah, but I
grow
honestly,
a
this is
spine and find a way. Okay, writers,
this is
sorry.
this is my conspiracy theory, and a part of it comes out of the fact that I very explicitly remember a lot of stuff being said quite early on about the show, where they were like, "This isn't Buffy, like it's not campy, whatever." Like they
Okay.
put quite a lot of like stock into this idea that like Supernatural is like a serious show. It's not like Buffy. So I
Tell that to Tall
do.
Tales.
Yeah, I do. Well, I do suspect that that may have been some of the motivation behind it. Of course, then they anyway. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know Eric Kripke's mind or whoever wrote this one, but I do wonder whether or not that might
Yeah,
be partially
it's
behind it.
just to me it's just such a weird move because they do so much research on every other like monster of the week, and here we
Mm-hmm.
are with a monster we all are going to be familiar with, and you're going to sit there and tell me that these like you're not Twilight, like you're letting them walk around in the day. Like what do you what
Yeah,
they're
I
like
can't.
I don't
I
like
kind of
it.
like that they make it at least so they are vulnerable to sunlight, like they don't enjoy it. Like
Well,
at least
neither
they're
do
not like
I'm pale too.
oh yeah, fully. Yeah,
Right.
true. Well, I mean, Terry Pratchett once said, and I think I brought this up when we did that like Buffett episode
Mhm.
on your other podcast. But Terry Pratchett has a bit in one of his Discworld books where there's vampires, where Granny Weatherwax basically says this line about like um, things that kill vampires kill most people.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting. Like I do like you don't have to it's not like Buffy by default. It just isn't. These are
No.
it's a different type of thing. They're not just after vampires, they're after
Yeah.
ever. And this just happens to be one time they run into them. So
Yeah.
this was written by two people, Catherine Humphries and John Siobhan. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really know these two. The editor was Sarah Gamble and Rael Tucker, so it's mostly women on this one that were writing.
John John Siobhan has been credited on quite a few episodes as a co-writer with Sarah, I think,
Okay.
previously. I
Oh
was also going
wow.
to say Provenance, the writer who wrote Provenance, that was his only Supernatural episode that he wrote, which is
It's
quite
such a
interesting.
good one. Well, Catherine
Yeah.
Humphries has been on was on Supernatural from 2006 to 2009. So she was
Mm-hmm.
writing on it through it looks like season 4, season 5. And then she went to write on
Interesting.
Mad Men, which I fucking love Mad Men. So go her.
Mm-hmm.
And you know John Chabon, which is interesting too. So like yeah, an X-Files producer. He was on the Ozarks as a producer, on Breaking Bad as a producer. So like I mean, we've got great like television like royalty kind of on
Mm.
this episode. I just will never like it when people change the vampire lore so much because
Yeah.
it to me it feels like a cop out. Like you made it to where the one thing that kills them is the thing you can get, which is dead man's blood, and it just really
Well, Dead
pisses
Man's
me
blood doesn't
off.
even kill them. It's
It just
like Dead
poisons
Man's
them.
blood is, yeah, it's more like kryptonite. The fact that they made it so you had to behead the vampire, like I know that beheading is a thing that works with vampires. Again,
Mm-hmm.
as Terry Pratchett said, beheading works with most people.
Right,
But
most.
yeah, but yeah, like removing staking. That's
That's
I just don't.
stupid.
It's not a vampire at this point. The
No.
one moment to me where they really felt like vampires was where we had the scene where the main leader of the vampire nest and his girlfriend mate were like making out in front of the victim, and
Yeah.
then like yeah, and then we're like it was that was the most vampire thing to me, because obviously like vampires in general are very like tied up in sexuality and like deviant sexuality,
Sensuality, yeah.
and yeah, well, deviant sexuality and like sexual like aggressiveness and transgression, and often like
Well, because
vampirism is
they're damned.
it.
Like
Yeah, yeah, and vampirism is often like portrayed as a metaphor for like sexual assault. So
well, yeah.
like that whole scene I felt leaned into that hard, and that was the only moment where they A, actually felt like vampires to me, and B, it felt scary. Like that scene made me feel very uncomfortable. So I guess good job.
I just think it's always going to be annoying to me when you change something so well established. It's
Yeah.
especially when you're in your first season. Like, if you're not ready to face what vampires really are, then write a different story. Then write a different
Yeah.
monster. There's a billion others you can do. Why are you going to bring vampires on to water them down and make them into something that you can just
Yeah,
do? You know, I
I
just
did
don't
also
like it.
I did also feel that something about the way that they were portrayed, where they were kind of saying like, oh, they mate for life, and like the way they were in the nest, it gave like pack animal, and to me, vampires should give cat,
Yeah, it
not
should be
like
a
not
fucking
wolf.
coven, not a pack. Yeah, they were acting like
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sorry,
more
the whole
werewolf.
thing pissed me off. Like, it's
Yeah,
you're doing such a good job.
And then John Winchester
We
turned up.
haven't started talking yet about what really pisses me off about this episode. I'm already heated, but like, it does really piss
Yeah,
me off that they're like, I guess I have really strong feelings about vampires, but like,
me too.
you're right. You're like the quintessential Buffy fan, but like, I've watched Buffy until I was a whole ass adult. Like, I watched Buffy
Mhm.
right before I started Supernatural, and you couldn't tell me that these two shows are anything alike. Like, I know,
No.
like, obviously they are both like on the CW, WB, whatever it was.
Mhm.
They're both like from the early aughts. They both fight monsters, but like, they're not alike in
No, they're
kind of
not.
any other way. So
As I said, I wouldn't have thought this as a connection if it wasn't for the fact that I just very distinctly remember a lot of like talk,
yeah.
specifically in early promotion, and also like a lot of like the boys talking early in cons, like very
Yeah.
early cons, where they kind of went out of their way to say this isn't Buffy. So
Oh, you
yeah,
would be so
that's
lucky if it were Buffy.
I
You know what I
know.
mean? Like, it's its own thing now, but like back then, Buffy was huge. Like, I would be like,
Yeah.
yeah, we really want to be like Buffy. Like, if you like Buffy, come watch our show because
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
fantastic, and it weirdly holds up despite it being by Whedon, despite it being so old. And
Yeah.
I think that like, I grew up watching vampire things. Like, I watched like, Are You Afraid of the Dark growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I read Goosebump books, like, I read Scary Stories. I watched Interview with the Vampire when I was young. I was a fan of the Underworld series. Like, I then True Blood, Twilight. Like, Twilight
Yeah.
is the first bastardization of the vampire lore that I was like, wait, what the hell is this? And it's cringe, dude. And so it's very strange to me, like, getting into
If
Supernatural, which does such incredible work looking into the lore of Wendigo, looking into the
yes,
lore of the Rougarou, the Tulpa, like all of these things. And I'm like, but the one thing we can all agree on, you guys are
I
deciding different.
I wonder if that's why. Like, it's their first, like, I guess, like, really classic monster.
Yeah, they haven't done like a
And
werewolf or anything.
yeah, and I think so. I think maybe they just, yeah, as I said, maybe it's partly due to the Buffy thing, and maybe it was also just they felt, oh, we need to put a spin on this because it's like a real, like, it's a classic. We need a twist on it or something. But I think
Maybe.
if you're gonna mess with vampire lore, you need to do it for. There needs to be a reason for it, and I don't just mean it would be fun to put a spin on it, right? There
Right.
needs to be, you need to be saying something with that twist. Like, what's that saying? What's that doing? What is that bringing to vampires? What are we
Yes.
saying about vampires by like changing this?
And I
Yeah,
think what it is that
um,
my question is why? And there's no
yeah,
reason. Like, why do
exactly.
we
Yeah.
think, like, maybe the reason I hate this so much is because you know who tells us all about the lore of vampires? John Winchester. And so
Yes.
he comes in and he's like, well, I thought they were all extinct. And the boys are like,
Oh, Audrey.
they were like mythological. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like,
My first, as I said, like he was on the screen for 5 seconds, and I immediately started caps locking. So like you've said before on the show, like what was this man teaching these boys?
nothing.
Nothing. Nothing. They didn't know.
He was just
They didn't know
neglecting
about
them
demons. He
and
didn't know about. They
torturing
didn't know
them
about demons. They
for
didn't know
nothing.
about vampire. They didn't know about vampires.
Mm-mm. Well, he didn't even know about
Like,
vampires, apparently, even though his mentor was allegedly a vampire hunter.
yeah, they
Like, I
taught.
don't
He taught
fucking
them.
understand.
he taught them to fucking bow hunt, a skill which they never use on this show, which
Right. Instead of playing
writers
soccer.
writers, why did you not give me Archer Sam? This is travesty. But
Yeah.
he taught them to bow hunt when they could have been playing soccer, and yet he didn't teach them about vampires. Like,
Yeah, and
what was this man doing?
but just think of like if the vampires on this show had been able to be killed via stake, then Sam could have used his bow, like his archery, as a way. Like they could have used the bow
Yes,
hunting to stake the vampires. Like this is such a missed opportunity, and I just like I hate it. So okay, this is
yeah,
what I'm gonna do. Because
okay,
this is
good.
such a crazy episode and there's so much to walk through. I'm just going to go
Yes.
through each of my bullet points in order. And usually we can jump around,
Okay.
but there's like so much that we're going to
Yeah,
get.
yeah, that sounds good.
Like, we're going to rage about. So let's just start with freaking. So dad drops out of thin air and he's like,
he does.
I heard about Daniel. Like they're in this Elkins like cabin and they walk outside and their dad's like at the car like randomly and it's in the middle of the fucking woods like in a cabin and he's like I got here as fast as I could and I was like cool but like when you heard your son was literally dying you just ignored it and when you knew both your sons were being set up by a demon you just waited in a hotel room to see if they made it out alive. Cool. So Sam the ever like voice against John Winchester for me on screen goes, so you came all the way out here for this Elkins guy? And I'm like, thank you. Same, Sam.
Yes.
Absolute fucking same. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Where have you been? And this man matters more to you than your children. And like, you know, I said Elkins and John had a falling out. Shocker, no one likes this man. But it turns out, and as I said in the summary when I was talking earlier, it's not about him paying his respects. It's 100% about him wanting that gun because he doesn't give a fuck about anyone but himself and his own like revenge.
Yeah, actually, can we talk a little bit about Elkins? So I just want to say first of all, something that I love in the early seasons that I really think gets represented and misunderstood in the later seasons. It's the early seasons understand hunting is fucking bad for you. It's it's not good. Like you see this man and he's like maybe in his 70s and he's like sat at a bar obsessively like going through his diaries. He
like clearly anxious.
Yeah. And it's like, what are you doing, man? Like I like the fact that the show at this point like consistently portrays hunting as something that is like even though the show needs it to keep going to like sustain the show, it portrays it as something that is bad for you and ruins your fucking life. It ruins your life.
It drives you into the ground. Like you are an absolute shell of your husk of a person by the time you actually meet your demise, whether it's in the field or at night, like deep in the woods by yourself because you have no one.
Exactly.
And
and that was the other thing. He was alone. He was in a cabin on his own in the woods. Like, I just think that's so telling. Yeah. I did also like the establishment of hunters' journals as a thing because prior to this, we've only seen John, so we didn't know if that was just a John thing or a hunter thing. Now, obviously, we know from this episode that like Elkins was specifically his mentor, but I think that it kind of sets up this idea of like a broader hunter community. And by doing that, it really highlights the fact that Sam and Dean were actually kept very isolated from that hunter community.
Which
it's
you
like,
would think even John like has a mentor, has a hunter he can reach out to give him guidance, but he hid that ability and that resource from his two sons. It's like he had to be their only like means of like understanding the hunter world. So I also wanted to touch on how stupid the vampire teeth like growing over the other set of teeth. Like, what are we doing? Like, just say it's a different kind of like creature. I don't know what they're fucking doing, but like go off, I guess. So dad's back. I wrote, God forbid Sam ask a fucking question. Like,
God, Sam, yes, be defiant, ask questions.
Yeah.
God, it's so hot.
Well, it makes me so angry because he's like asking these questions and dad's like, well, just follow me. Okay. And I'm like, you could just also answer the questions. Like he wants to know, why are we going here? How do you know the things you know? Like we're adults. Treat us like we are on the same level as you because we're not kids anymore. And I think this is like, I really, really connect with this episode and especially Sam because like it's like a struggle for people sometimes when they become adults for their parents
Mm-hmm.
who have always looked at them as children to see them as adults. But
Yes.
John's thing is he sees adult children acting as adult as a slight against him and he takes it as like
Yeah.
a personal disrespect because his ego is so fucking giant. And I'm just like, why is John so weird about Sam wanting to know why he's making a decision the way that he is? What is so wrong with asking why and how? How is that a disrespect? And like, I just feel like it's a really weird, I said it's like a boomer ass attitude. I feel like treat me like an authority because he's an authoritarian. He's not asking like, hey, I'm your father and I'm treating like a father. He's saying I'm your authority and you better
Yeah.
treat me like an authority and do as I say without second thought is like his whole thing. And it's just like, answer the question. It's not
Yeah.
hurting you to let Sam know, oh, I know that this is right because I actually like have these coordinates and they cross with this other thing and I saw this. And
Yeah.
instead he's just like, no, do what I say. And like it's real pissy. And I'm just like, fuck off.
You have Sam Winchester and his big, beautiful brain at your disposal, and you crush his like
Yeah.
curiosity
You push
and
it back
like
every time, pushes
yeah,
back.
and like it. I can't imagine like how freeing it must have been for Sam when he left, and like just being able to just like ask questions and
Yeah.
like
He
and just
says
like
at one
I
point, like,
think he like
this is
get to
why I
flex
left.
that brain.
He's
Yeah.
like, this is why I
Um.
left. And his dad is like,
Yeah.
what'd you say to me? And Sam's like, I left because you treat me like shit.
Oh my
Like,
god.
why are you so shocked? Like, he criticizes Dean. Usually, when there's like a narcissistic parent, there's like a golden
Mm.
child and then like one that gets the shit all the time. And you could say that Dean was like the golden child, but actually, no, like they're both like treated like shit. You can see
Yeah.
John wanting to put Sam in his place. And then Dean doesn't even do anything. Like, and in fact, Dean is often like on John's side, like quietly, but still kind of like, yeah, Sam, like, let's just get through this. And John still turns to Dean and criticizes him, like, damn, if I knew you were gonna let the Impala like rust up, I wouldn't have left you the car. And I'm like, this is son that is like worshiping the ground you walk on it. And you're like being a dick to him too. Like, for why? For what? Also,
Mm.
the Impala looks fine. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, I did note that they did draw attention to the fact that it was a little bit like muddy in Provenance, where they had like that like pan of all the like fancy cars and then the Impala and they had like mud on it. So I guess they were kind of like
Yeah.
setting it up. But otherwise,
But
like there's
also,
nothing wrong with how that Impala looks.
no, like they were just showing that these are like working class boys and that they're going to a place with a bunch of rich, snooty art like
Yeah, exactly.
purchasing.
Yeah.
And so, God
Yeah.
forbid Dean drive a car through mud. Like, I just don't fucking understand. And
Yep.
this is what I want to talk about specifically with the Sam Dean John dynamic is that Dean,
Mm-hmm.
like Dean, okay, so John, we have already said needs like authority. Like he needs
Yeah.
blind following from his boys.
Mm-hmm.
And Sam needs to be treated with respect and like equality. And then Dean needs dishonest harmony within that dynamic. He's like,
Yeah.
whatever's going to cause the least amount of trouble, that's where I'm going to fall on the side,
Yes.
which usually means siding with dad because he knows dad will not budge, but he believes maybe he can get Sam to like at least grin and bear it just for his sake. And
Mm-hmm.
so Sam gets the shit in because he refuses to sit in the dishonesty. He wants to call it out. He wants to be treated with more respect. And neither of those things are unreasonable, but because of John's ego, it's considered bad. Like Sam is the
Yes.
bad one. And Dean then has to side with dad to move them through it to get them back into the dishonest harmony. And it's just like such a toxic cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. And it yeah. Um, and what you were saying like before about the fact that John doesn't allow questions. John wants to just you know, Sam literally has that line like earlier on in the season about like he just barks orders at us and we're expected
Mm-hmm.
to follow him or whatever. And like John does literally admit in this episode, like at some point I stopped being your father and start, you know, and I became your drill sergeant. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, because that's what he is. That's how he treats them. Every time they call him sir, I
Ugh.
literally like,
It's
oh,
a
shudder.
cringe. I know.
Yeah, I mean, because a number one, that is, I know that's like especially like a particular kind of like American like dynamic, I guess.
Yeah.
You wouldn't really
Yeah.
hear that here, but like
Yeah.
at least yeah. So that's like a real thing where people do like call their like father sir, and it just, oh, it always makes me
Well,
creep out. But like in this particular scenario, it is even worse.
yeah, because when you see that kind of action, you're like, what is going on behind the scenes to train them
Exactly.
to get to
Yeah.
be like that? So when Sam and Dean are in the Impala together, like dad is driving that douchey fucking truck around, which I'm
Yes.
like, yes, of course this maniac would drive that ridiculous car, but Sam kind of speaks up and he's frustrated. Now Dean doesn't want, he's like, no, I don't want to do this. And Sam's like, whatever, I
Hmm.
have these feelings, I'm going to have them. And he says, not that he is mad at dad or this or that, but more so it is not a fair way for him to treat us. And he says it not just about himself. He points out this is not how either of them should be expected
No.
to be treated or to be dealt with anymore. And I feel like it's something that Dean has needed to hear and was never going to come to on his own.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
when it's
I.
grandstand time and Sam flips like he turns the Impala and does a fishtail and dad in his disgusting truck like has to stop. He's like, what the hell? What was that about? And so we get the moment where he's like, Sam's like, we need to talk about everything. And, he sat through an entire season of zero answers. And John
Hmm.
thinks that he can just come back and go and contradict himself over and over without Sam asking questions. And Sam's sick of it. Like, it isn't like Sam is there to just like be a rebel or whatever. He is literally like, I have been patient. I have been obedient. I have
Yep.
been politely asking. You've given me nothing and no reason to trust your judgment anymore. And you even came back and then dipped immediately again. You've never been there
Hmm.
for us when we needed you. So you owe us these answers. And when he won't get these answers and they're bowing up to each other, Sam and John chest to chest, Dean is like, oh my God. And so when Dean gets them apart and Sam says, this is why I left in the first place, John gets so fucking angry. And
Yeah.
he comes at Sam. He physically comes at Sam. He physically puts his hands on Sam. He jerks Sam up by the collar of his shirt. His child.
Extremely notably, in a
Yes.
very similar way to the way that Dean does that to Sam in the pilot.
Yes. And John says, well, Sam left and he indeed needed him. And so Sam, was in the wrong. And Sam, with his voice cracking, this is such an incredible performance by
Mm-hmm.
Jared. He shouts back, you were the one who said, don't come back.
Don't come back.
You closed that door. He was a child. He was
Yep.
17. He was 18. And this clearly hurt Sam to even bring up, let alone like say to his father's face. And he's like, he has tears in his eye. And
Yeah.
he's never even said it to his dad before. So this is the first time he's
No.
actually verbalized it. And the pain in his voice and his face clearly shows the destruction that this did to him as a child. To hear that from his own father, and yet here his father is, and this is what I relate to, and I will talk a little more
Mm-hmm.
about it. But here he stands before his father 4 years later, and he still has that same stance that he took when he kicked his child out. And instead of like finding a way to come towards a middle ground, maybe Sam has hoped that John has found like a place in his heart to be like, maybe I was too hard on him. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe he said some things, but I shouldn't have said things either. No, he is still standing in the same stance that he stood the day he kicked him out. How utterly devastating for Sam to hear that after 4 years, John still holds going to college on a full ride scholarship to Stanford as Sam's greatest sin. Girl.
Yep.
Like, I just
Yeah.
I can't imagine like the what he's been through the last 4 years trying to like restart. But now this last year, trying to help his brother and chase down his mother's killer and his girlfriend's killer. And all this time trying to navigate a way to interact with his father that won't be like horrendously painful, hoping that the next time they see each other, he doesn't abandon him or reject him, and maybe they can find some common ground. Only to hear, oh, the truth is, you still hold that against me, despite it not even being anything wrong that I did.
Yeah. Um, the bit that I really got from that was, to me, the most important line in that whole bit was, "You were just pissed off. You couldn't control me anymore."
Yes.
The control is so important
Mm-hmm.
because something that I would consider a defining characteristic of Sam throughout the seasons, you know, aside from his kindness and his goodness and his empathy and his desire for, his ability to find hope in things, is also his desperate and persistent need for control over his own autonomy. And it's like, oh, it's such a mystery as to where that came from. And obviously, as the seasons go on, the reasons for that get layered on top of each other.
Yes.
You know, like
Yes.
Sam's struggle is ultimately a struggle for his like personal and bodily autonomy.
And he
If
will
if I
lose it
really if I
forever.
really had to, yeah, if I really had to boil like Sam's like ultimate like battle throughout the
Mm-hmm.
seasons down to something, it would be that. But I also think that it's interesting because actually control is a theme for both of them,
Mm-hmm.
because both of them have spent their entire lives without control, and so both of them desperately crave it, but they externalize that need in different ways.
Yeah.
Sam's need for control relates to himself. It is personal. It is about control over his life, his decisions, his body. Dean's need for control expresses itself in a need to control the people in his life, because what
And
he's most
Sam
afraid
is
of
the
is
only one in his life.
yeah, like what we've brought up before, like what
Mm-hmm.
he's most afraid of is losing the people in his life. Um, and ultimately what that manifests as is losing control of those people. So it's fascinating because it's the same trauma and it comes from the same root, but the way in which they end up externalizing it is very different. And of course, ultimately what it means is that Dean's need for control of Sam results in Sam losing that bodily autonomy and personal autonomy for himself that he so
Yes.
desperately needs. So that made me feel extremely
I
many
hate it.
feelings.
I know.
Yeah. I am so sorry to you to have to edit this episode.
It's okay. I knew there was going to be a lot to say because there's so much
Yeah.
that goes on, and we're not even to the next big moment. So let's talk about that. So,
Yeah.
the vampire shit does not matter to me in this because it's
No.
almost nonsensical to me.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
the next note I wrote was like,
I think we covered that by
yeah,
like
it's stupid.
they're stupid, yeah.
It's stupid and they get the cult. Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
John's shitty giant ass truck is exactly the kind of fucking vehicle I'd imagine a douchebag like him driving. Makes a lot of sense. So I was obviously in a good headspace. So later Dean is sent to the morgue to get dead man's blood, or to the funeral home. One of them. You can get it in both places. And so it leaves John and Sam alone to, I don't know, be awkward together in the hotel. They're just like pretending nothing happened earlier in the day, where like you didn't just grab your son by the collar and like physically threaten him because checks notes he wanted to know why and how. But he kind of says, remember the day you were born, and he gives us like not the day you were born speech from this loser.
Oh, I know.
He started a college fund for both the boys, which he does
Mm-hmm.
admit to later spending on ammunition because he's a piece of fucking shit. Like, are you kidding me? But he says, I need him. Well, I said, I need him to die immediately. But he does admit that he stopped being a father and started being a drill sergeant. But does he
Yeah.
even apologize? No. So
No.
Sam claims that they're not different. He's like, we're just so different. And so I didn't know how to understand you. And Sam's like, well, I don't think we're so different because we have the same kind of trauma. Like you lost mom and the love of your life, and I lost Jess, and it's sad. And he's like, let's bond over this shared trauma. And maybe we could, like, even though it's something that, like, technically, I do believe John could have prevented Jess's death
Mm.
in some way if he had been more open with Sam about what was going on, but he didn't. And I just I just feel like I do not buy for a second that all John could think about when Sam was off at college was how vulnerable and unsafe Sam would be out
No.
there and alone. Like there is no way that that's true because he made it impossible for Sam to feel that he could even return. So, like, how is that being worried about Sam's safety and
It
wanting
doesn't.
to protect him? It doesn't make any sense. John says, you know what to do when they get the Deadman's blood back. And it's like, do they know what to do? Like,
Exactly.
we
Yeah, and
we
he
said at
says
the beginning of the
again.
episode, we don't know. We've never even faced vampires before.
Yeah,
And so
yeah. Again, he says like, I wanted you prepared, and I just said like, what, by telling them absolutely jack shit, like
yeah,
John Winchester? I swear to God, like,
what are you
prepared
talking
for
about?
what?
Like, Sam is out at college and he's vulnerable, and then you're like, great, stay out there vulnerable and feel completely unable to ever reach back out to me, even if you want to, because I've been so awful to you. And
Yeah.
so, like, even as they move through this case and they had this like heart to heart in the hotel, it crops back up again where like Sam is like realizing again, like, you really didn't mean that heart to heart, did you? Because like you want to leave again. You want to go off without
Hmm.
us again, And Sam says,
Yeah.
you have to stop treating us like this. We're not children. And John counters with, but you are my children. Except a scene earlier, he admitted in this
That
very
they weren't.
episode that he stopped treating them like they were kids, that they were his children, but that he was
Exactly.
using them like fucking soldiers, like tools. So this isn't about John's fatherly protection. It's about his selfish pride, his revenge plan, full stop. Like the only good thing about this moment is that Dean interjects, and for the first time, John has to like double back and be like, wait a second, you mean the kid I always steamroll isn't the only one who feels this way? And so when John says
Yeah.
that right? So when John says Mary's death nearly killed him, and he's like, I won't watch my kids die too. He was, I won't do it. Dean counters and without a hesitation, like without 1 second hesitation,
Oh, that was me doing an excited
clicking.
little.
Oh yes, okay.
Yeah,
I was like,
sorry.
he goes, Dean counters with this like very like intuitive, insightful response. He's like, what if you die? And we could have stopped it. And I was just so
Yeah.
proud of him in that moment for speaking up because it is exactly the point. John doesn't care
Yes.
about them as whole people. He only cares about them as far as they are useful to him or as far as they belong to him. He doesn't
Yeah.
care if he's putting them in the same position to lose somebody that they care about, their dad. And Dean is
Hmm.
calling his father out as a hypocrite. And I just, it was something I feel healed me because like Sam's
Yes.
there like, oh wow, like he's on my side all of a sudden. And it's like he's finally broken through to the other side a little bit.
Yeah. So I had so much to say about this whole little bit. So
Yeah. And he even says
so
that the cutest little thing about Dean, out this is the last thing I'll say, is like he goes,
oh,
he
go for it.
he's trying not to be disrespectful to his dad while standing up to him. And he's like, I've been doing some thinking, Dad. And I think Sammy may be right about this one. And it's just like
Yeah.
so
Doesn't he say something
sweet.
like, with all due respect, that's bullshit or something? Like,
Yes,
yeah.
he
Bless him.
absolutely does. He's we're
My
stronger as
tiny
a
boy.
family, Dad. Yeah, I said in this episode, Dean is my son.
Yeah. um yeah, so the conversation between like Sam and John where John admits to being the drill sergeant and where Sam kind of like, I think, feels some sort of feeling like they're on the verge of reconciliation, and then of course John then just kind of stamps all over that.
He's
But
back on his bullshit
yeah,
in the next scene.
yeah. So I have a couple of things to say about that. It's number one, you're exactly right about the fact that like he just admitted that he's their drill sergeant, not their father, and hasn't been for a while. And the thing is, in abusive relationships, there's a cycle of the abuse happening and then the period in which everything is still and calm and apologies are made, although they're very rarely apologies that actually are apologies.
Right.
They feel like apologies. And they're not, it's not always that the abuser consciously knows that's what they're doing, but it is a method to bring the person who is being abused back under your control.
Yeah, it's like breadcrumbing.
Yeah, because you can push someone only so far before they will start to become like Sam and say, no, this is bullshit. So you need those periods where you at least put on a face of like being contrite about it and admitting a fault, but without necessarily actually giving a substantive apology.
Yes.
And that's what that was to me. Like that,
yes.
that I think, and I suspect,
giving himself an excuse, like, oh, I just loved
yeah.
you so much, I was worried.
Yeah, and I suspect there's been a lot of cycles of that in their lives, of this like extreme, you know, switch between moods, where John will kind of do this, and then suddenly he'll be like, right, well, I've done it, I've got them back under control now.
I can go back to being a dick.
Yeah, now here's the next set of orders. And the other thing is, I understand why Sam feels like they're the same now, and I also think that that's so very Sam to say, here's something that we share, and to empathize with John through it.
Yes,
like that's what he's trying to do in that scene. Like he's he is so empathetic, but I also want to tell him, like, you share this same trauma, but you would never do what John did.
Yes, exactly.
There is no universe in which Sam like abandons and neglects and abuses his children in pursuit of the revenge.
Never.
There's no universe in which that happens.
He would never do that to Dean. Yeah,
and the show, I think, unfortunately, the show is very interested in like drawing Sam and John parallels. Like it does it throughout. It really, sometimes it's quite heavy-handed with the way it tries to do it. But what's interesting to me is they never work for me. They never feel effective.
No.
But they do clearly work for some people, because there's a large sections of the fandom who love to talk about how Sam is just John, and you know they're the same. But the thing is that
so insane to me.
The ways in which they are similar are not relevant to the way in which John treats them. They're similar in that they are both, I think, they both have a deep pragmatism. They both have stubbornness. They both have they can both, I think, have ironclad wills. They both organize their gun collections in extremely OCD ways.
Yes.
we see Sam in Mystery Spot. Like he organizes his guns. I saw a side-by-side GIF actually the other day, and like they're literally laid out the exact same way as John's, which again, the show is really trying to be like, hey, they're the same. That doesn't matter. That has nothing to do with how John treats them. The show's very interested in saying that Dean and Mary are the same.
They're not. But I don't get that.
No.
Mary was like loving and soft, and nothing about Dean is soft. Like he's very... Yeah. I mean, you can just have two boys who aren't like either of their parents, but we don't. We have true. One boy who is very clearly like his dad, and it's Dean.
Yeah, because the ways in which Dean is like his dad is the ways in which he acts.
And that's not to say, y'all, I hate John Winchester. I do not hate Dean. I think it is a tragedy what John has done to the boys, and they do like cope in
Yeah.
their own ways, and Dean just happens to cope in a similar way that John
Yes.
does, and so he's more like his father than Sam.
Yeah.
But I in no way want it to get like screwed
No,
up
no,
that
no.
I somehow hate Dean. I do not. I do hate John.
No. Yeah, I have not kind feelings towards Dean in some of the later seasons, but I
Yeah.
certainly do not hate him. I would never have kept going with the show if I hated him.
Yeah. We love him.
I always feel, yeah. But yeah, I really wanted to draw attention to that I think that the ways in which the show tries to draw parallels actually between Sam and John actually undermine themselves because the parallels are ultimately superficial.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the things that in a different life could have actually made Sam and John close and bond, but in this life they're irrelevant and they don't matter to yeah to the ways in which John and Sam are similar in like meaningful ways, which is zero.
Yeah. And I think that's why that moment, didn't really last into the next scene. Like
Yes.
John, it meant nothing to John. He was like, yeah, sure. And then the next scene, he's, doing the thing that Sam was just trying to talk to him about. And so I think you're absolutely right. It's irrelevant because it
Yeah.
doesn't make any actual in universe impact that they have that connection.
Oh, I also love Dean saying, "You mean we saved your ass?"
Yeah.
to John
Well,
as well. Like,
because John says you ignored a direct order, and he goes, "Yes, sir," and we saved your ass. It's like,
yeah,
thank
and
God for
that's the
Dean.
moment. Yeah, I said, Dean, my darling little duckling.
I
I love you so
know. I was
much.
so proud of him.
And then that's the moment where we get Sam's like little surprised, like his face. He's so surprised and he's so proud,
He's like,
and I love that.
I
Yeah, like
know.
the way that Jared plays it, I just love it because it's not just like that he's shocked at Dean doing this. It's you can see that he's like, oh, he's so proud of Dean for doing it as
He's
well.
probably really
Like I love that.
grateful because he
Yeah.
doesn't have to be the one to do it. When you're the one who
Yes.
always has to speak up, it's tough. And there have been situations where, like, I'll be like maybe in a group of friends or a certain group in my family or whatever, where I'm the only one, maybe at work too, where I'm the only one who'll say anything. And you get that reputation. Like Sam has a reputation as the difficult son, the annoying, this
Mm-hmm.
difficult brother, because he's gonna speak up. And I know the relief when someone else speaks up and says what I know I usually would have to say, and I don't have to this time. And so now I not only feel relief, I feel supported and backed up and
Yeah.
seen. And I love that moment for Sam because that's like the most fraught relationship dynamic of his life, and
Yes.
he's getting that support from his brother. I love that.
I I do also think it's very telling because again, there's a little bit of fandom mythology about the idea of like Dean as like Sam's protector, and the idea that Dean stood up. That Dean was always standing up for Sam against John in their childhood. And
No.
again, I would like to very heavily say this is not in any way me saying something bad about Dean. I'm not blaming him. He was a child.
He's a child. Yeah.
He couldn't physically protect Sam. That wasn't a possible thing to be able to do. But the surprise on Sam's face and that like sense of pride and gratefulness, I think is very indicative of the fact that this is not a dynamic that he's experienced before. I think what he has
Yeah.
experienced is exactly what you said, which is that like false calm. Like I
Mhm.
think
The
that's what Dean has
dishonest
done.
harmony. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Dean has put himself in between to like break up arguments before,
Hmm.
in order to try and get everyone back to this like false sense of harmony.
Hmm.
But I think this is the first time that Dean has actually really genuinely stood up and said no.
Yeah, because keeping them from fighting is not the same as sticking
No,
up for your brother. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
you can stop the immediate chaos, but that doesn't mean that justice prevails. And
Yeah.
and we've seen in this season, like, where Sam has said, like, oh, well, you were like the perfect child, and dad was always on my case. And Dean would be like, well, sometimes you're out of line. And so, like, we clearly see his perception is, well, sometimes Sam deserved it. He didn't protect
Yeah.
Dean from it. He was not complicit. He's a child, but he
exactly.
he didn't disagree with it, you know?
No, exactly. Yeah. And it's doing a disservice to Dean as a character to say, oh, he protected Sam throughout his childhood, and this is just a continuation of that. I think it's actually way more interesting, and it makes this a bigger moment and more of a turning point to say that this is a turning point for Dean. Like this
Yeah.
is a point in which he actually grasps that and realizes that. And again, it actually to me then just makes it so much sadder that Dean kind of starts to then become his father
Yeah. It's
later on.
so
And really,
tough.
I said last night in the group chat, to me, the point at which that process begins, although it takes a while to really take hold, is once John has gone from their lives. Once John is dead, that's where that process really begins. But this makes me feel so sad because he's like right on that precipice of like getting it and getting out of the mindset. And I think that yeah, it's interesting because I cheer for John's death, but also kind of mourn it in terms of the way in
Yeah.
which it then actually I think shifts the boys' dynamic because Dean almost has to step into the vacuum that John has left,
Yeah.
and
Well,
then
because
starts to fulfill that role.
yeah, because of his grief, and we'll talk about this when we get into season two,
Yeah,
but like that grief really pushes him into that place. I
yeah,
think because, Sam loses Jess and like John loses Mary, and while Sam and
mm-hmm.
Dean both lose Mary, the closest relationship Dean has ever lost is gonna be John. And so when
Yeah,
John dies, that's his like origin
yes,
of grief
exactly.
and where he
Yeah,
starts going. But all right, do we want to
um,
do final thoughts on this episode and then rate it?
yeah. Well, I guess a kind of final thought on that scene is John, of course, he actually admits that Dean is right after Dean says that.
Thank
Right?
God.
He says, yeah, he says you were right. My question is, if it had been Sam, would he have ever admitted it? Brackets doubt. I
Yeah.
don't think so. I
Yeah.
think that's important, and that's why it's so important that it was
Mhm.
Dean who did that because I don't think I mean the entire history of their dynamic proves that Sam never could have got
No,
him
he
to
never
admit that.
listens. Yeah, he never listens to
Yeah.
Sam. But they do decide
Um,
to go like after the demon
yeah.
together, and I put whoopee.
Yeah, I think my final thoughts on this episode is the vampires are a nonsense. Um, they're not even scary. As I said, the only moment in which they feel genuinely frightening to me is the scene that where they very explicitly draw on the vampirism as sexual violence
Mm-hmm.
motif. Um, Other than that, they're just kind of like weird, like douchey, like early 2000s, like emo hipstery kind of people. Like it's such a weird ass vibe to give them as well. Like
You're
it's just
so right.
it's not a very vampire vibe, if you know what I
No,
mean.
I
Like
hate it.
vampires work best if they feel like they've been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Whereas like
They
these
tried
people feel
to
like these
make
people
it,
feel like they were turned yesterday.
yeah, you're right. They tried to make it seem like the main guy who was like fully just like a early aughts like preppy emo guy was a
Mm-hmm.
old cowboy, like that he was born in like the during the cult era. But I was like,
Yeah, yeah.
right,
Nothing about his characterization gave me that. Yeah.
not at
So yeah,
all.
I think the vampire part of this is like it, and I think to be honest, in the way it's written, like it doesn't matter. This is all about the Winchester family dynamics.
Agree.
Um, that's where the meat of this episode is, obviously, because that's what we've talked about for most of this. So that's where the interest is. That's where the frustration and the anger and the pure joy at Dean like coming to an epiphany and standing
Yes.
up and yeah, and that's what's interesting about this episode. So there is good stuff in here, but it's kind of like the medium in which it's
Mhm.
delivered is
Yeah.
subpar.
It's against a backdrop that's just like really silly, but like at least we
Yeah.
get a lot of Winchester dynamics. We get the cult, and so the myth arc
Mm-hmm.
is moving forward, and now we're ready to enter the last two episodes of the season. Like this is it. Like I think next episode is going to be like part one of essentially the finale.
Yeah.
So are we ready to rate the episode?
I think so.
Okay, let's do wardrobe judgment. What
Okay.
descriptor did you give it?
I'm really worried because I feel like you have this like way better tasting clothes than me, so you're probably gonna
Oh,
just like give me
please,
a look.
no. No, 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 no.
I said genuinely good.
So hey, so
Okay,
I.
okay.
No, there's
I really like this blue check shirt on Sam. It
who wrote
actually fits.
that?
It fits his body,
Yes.
which is unusual, and
Yeah,
he doesn't have another layer over it, and the check is flattering. Like it's not stripes. It's not like
it's
weird vertical
pretty.
stripes.
I
Yeah.
made a note of it because I really liked the
Okay.
shirt. And then later on, Dean has this cute little denim shirt on, and I was like, even though we're supposed to be, I mean, it's not about Dean, but he is my son in this episode, and I was like, I'm
Yes.
making it genuinely good because I
We
love
can
both of
make an
those.
allowance.
Oh, no. No, we like the same shit. Every time you put something in the chat, you're like, I'm getting this. I'm like, oh my God. So you're being so silly to
Okay.
say that.
No, but you and Jess were like always the people who had like um well, number one, I think you are now outnumbered in the pod in Team Rusty Bacon versus like anti Rusty Bacon because I
And
think it's just you and Jess who are like anti Rusty Bacon,
I think Jess
and then
actually
and
likes it
like
now. She's
yeah, that's what I
like,
said. No, Jess is like anti Rusty Bacon, but in like a so bad it's good kind of way.
yep,
Whereas I think you're like the only one who's like truly anti Rusty Bacon,
I hate
and
it.
the rest of us are like we're like pro Rusty Bacon. So I've just
Jules is,
had her like Sam Winchester, what are you wearing tag. So
yeah.
I just feel like you two like you connected very deeply with like Sam's wardrobe, whereas I have like one or two shirts that I have like extreme heart eyes feelings for, and then everything else I'm just like, oh, it's Sam.
Right.
He always looks lovely.
We've talked
So,
about this damn shirt so many times and it hasn't even showed up yet. So I'm gonna just explain it. It is a rust color. Like imagine all the shades of rust that you can, and it's striped, but it's not striped in the same direction. So there's two pockets on the front of his chest where the stripes go over these pockets. It's a pearl snap thing. And because the straps go across instead of up and down like the rest of the shirt, it looks like two pieces of bacon are just stapled to his chest, and it's horrendous. And for some reason, all these women think it's amazing. So
it's beautiful.
all right.
I also have a soft spot for it because Mahindra in Heroes also has that exact Rusty Bacon shirt.
That's so funny that you guys like
Yeah.
found it in another show. Well, and I mean, I hate it and we keep talking about it. It hasn't even popped up yet, but it will. And when it does, I'm sure we'll have a conversation about it. Okay, let's do the
Okay.
Sam fan friendly scale.
Yes.
So we got screen time, enjoyment, hard eyes. Let's start with screen time.
Okay, I gave this a 3.8. I think there is some the bits that are like Sam standing up to John, like him finally getting to articulate, you know, you were pissed because you couldn't control me anymore.
Yeah.
Him being able to say you're the one who closed the door, like all of that stuff. Fucking banger. Like give it to me like over and over and over again. But I think number one, I think really the big moment of the episode belongs to Dean. Which is not, I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying that to me, I think kind of like is a little bit of a knock on the Sam screen time, because really the pivotal moment of the episode is Dean actually coming to this realization.
That's interesting. I gave it a 4.5. I think that because he's on screen so much, and I would say the majority of the conflict and resolution hinges on his relationship with his father.
Yes.
That was to me really like
the
fruitful screen time for him.
Yeah, the other thing that lowered it for me, and maybe this is just because, like, as you said, like you're just basically ignoring the case entirely.
Yeah.
But when I was kind of thinking about the episode as a whole, the actual case, the boys, like both Sam and Dean, I would say, basically kind of get sidelined because the whole point is that they don't know anything about vampires because John hasn't told them anything. So it's basically just like John turns up, John barks orders at them, John tells them how to do it, John gets the kill.
Right.
So, like, actually, Sam and Dean, in terms of the case, don't get to do anything. Sam doesn't get to use his big, beautiful brain. He doesn't get to solve anything or understand anything or find anything out. Like, he doesn't even get to, like, look through John's journal and find an answer, really.
Yeah.
It's just, like, John turns up and he tells them the solution.
Does
so
everything. Yeah.
that to me like knocks it down. So yeah, 3.8 I think for me.
Cool. And for enjoyment, what did you give it?
Um yeah, again, like I think I was kind of between like a 3.8 and a 4.2. I think I'm going to go for a 4.2. So as I said, like the screen time got knocked down because of the other stuff. I think in the joy segment, I'm more willing to ignore the fact that they got kind of sidelined in the case,
Right.
and yeah. So I think 4.2 because like the moments that he's on screen, I was kind of just being like yes, like
Yeah.
you tell him. So you know,
I gave it a 3, and it was because
okay.
everything about John Winchester makes me so fucking angry. Like, like I can admit that everything that Sam did in this episode was fantastic and I loved it. And but I did not enjoy myself, and it's not his
Yeah, that's
fault.
fair.
But my
I think
God, I hate him.
I think it was also that I got so much joy on Dean's behalf, but also on Sam's behalf by that moment with Dean at the end. Like as I said,
Yes.
that the look with which Sam gives him that has that like pride and like gratefulness in it, like that to me bumps it up a little
I
bit because
know.
I just felt that, like I really felt it in my heart when that happened, and I was like, oh, I feel joy for him that he got to see that finally, like you know, he got to
Yeah.
feel that he wasn't the only one who had to keep battling this battle within the
Yeah.
family. So yeah,
And heart eyes.
this is low on the heart eyes just because again I think there's just not enough, like he doesn't get to be empathetic with victims. There's like a tiny little moment where he like help, like he goes to help that one woman who was a
Mm-hmm.
victim of the vampires but I think had been turned, is this the suggestion by that point, and he's kind of like cute and empathetic there, but like otherwise yeah, it's not really heart eyes. Like it was more like me being like, yes, get him, baby, but like not necessarily like in a like oh heart eyes kind of way. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like yeah.
So what did you give it?
Sorry, I said 2.5.
Oh my God. Okay. I missed it.
It's all right.
That was wonderful. Okay. No, I gave it a 4, and here's why.
Okay, interesting.
Because I could not enjoy this episode, but I
Okay.
felt such deep like pride and love for the battle that Sam was waging emotionally.
Okay.
And that made me, that's really attractive to me, as like I just feel like being like emotionally honest and being emotionally
Mhm.
vulnerable, that is like the way to my heart.
That's so interesting because I think like my reason for giving the joy score a
Mm-hmm.
high score is basically like your same reason for heart eyes,
Yeah,
and
it
then
is.
like it's kind of like it's basically just we've given the same score but we've given it to different categories. So that's
Yeah,
interesting. Like
100%.
yeah.
Okay, so my average rating for this was a 3.83. Yours was a 3.5. And
Yeah, that
overall,
sounds
it's
right.
a 3.6. So that's high. I mean, like, that's not nothing.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I think that's representative. As I said, like the vampire rapping is
Yeah,
nothing, but the Winchester family dynamics are num num num, good food, delicious. Like
everything. Exactly. Well, Vic, thank you for coming on and like bearing
yes.
with me through this like ramble fest that I had. Like,
um, I think that I cannot throw any stones in that department. Bye.
bye.